Welcome to High Drama. Did the shows have us rolling in the aisles or rolling our eyes this time?
At New World Stages, you can see Rolling Thunder, with a book by Bryce Haley, directed by Kenneth Turing, and originally produced by Rebecca Blake. It features a lot of late 60s rock songs because it tells the story of three American servicemen fighting in Vietnam in 1969. Johnny and Tommy volunteer, and Andy is drafted. Johnny is from a farm family. He writes home about the constant rain and them, while the farm is in deep trouble because of a drought. Johnny is in love with his high school girlfriend, Linda, whom he wants to marry when he returns to the States. Tommy is a childhood friend of Johnny's who has moved to Detroit and who easily gets involved with many girls. Andy, who is Black, is warned by his friend Mike, also Black, who has more Army experience, to be on guard toward the white soldiers who might attack him. Andy exchanges letters with his mom, who becomes involved with anti-war protesting. Television newsreel footage gives information about the war and politics. This is a rock musical with great period songs providing energy and commentary on the characters, their predicaments, and their emotions. The performers are all talented actors as well as great singers. Some of the highlights for me are Linda, played by Cassidy Pope, singing Help Me Make It Through the Night and Killing Me Softly with his song. Johnny, played by Drew Becker, singing Bridge Over Troubled Water. Tommy, played by Justin Matthew Sargent, hard-rocking House of the Rising Sun. Andy, Deontay Goodman, giving an almost gospel spin to evil destruction. This show will have you bopping to the beats, but it will also tug at your heartstrings. It's a really fine production. I gave it a happy face, definitely, as well.
Michael Vegas Mussman's Alan Turing and the Queen of the Night used opera tropes to tell the story of Alan Turing, who famously laid the groundwork for computers in cracking the German code with Enigma. Alan fell in love with Christopher in high school because Christopher liked science and Alan liked math, and they worked well together. They were hoping to go to Cambridge together, but Alan didn't get in, and Christopher died tragically. Alan meets Christopher's mom, and they bond over Christopher. She's the Queen of the Night in the title. Alan also joins Knox and a team of women known as computers to crack the German code at Bletchley Park. He becomes quite friendly with Joan. Will she be able to save him from the dangers of being a homosexual back in the 40s, where it was a crime? And never mind how much Alan heroically saved thousands of lives in the war. And singing throughout the show is a Greek chorus of three people. Unfortunately, the sound system was terrible. It was very hard to understand the lyrics. So every time they sang, I had no idea what they were saying. It was also hard to understand when they were speaking too sometimes. But luckily, like Norma Desmond said, back then we had faces. And the actors' faces were very expressive. So I could understand their emotions and thoughts. They also had beautiful voices that helped. Unfortunately, the show was mostly incomprehensible to me, and I know the story of Alan Turing very well. I saw the Broadway show Breaking the Code and the Benedict Cumberbatch movie. This did not move me or excite me. Maybe I just don't like opera and I have no knowledge of Queen of the Night and its significance. For someone who does, they might enjoy this more than I did, so I gave it a mixed face minus.
At Irondale in Brooklyn, you can see Well, I'll Let You Go, written by Bubba Weller and directed by Jack Serio. This takes place in the suburban farmhouse where Maggie and her husband Marv have lived for 25 years. A seemingly omniscient narrator explains details about the house and about Maggie and Marv's life. Marv has recently died, and Maggie meets a series of individual townspeople in the aftermath. Marv's cousin Wally, who isn't quite able to take care of himself, comes over for meals on a regular, and to Maggie, somewhat annoying basis. He only has one scene, but Will Dagger creates a fully developed, quirky character. Joni from the funeral parlor comes over with purple balloons and many suggestions for the funeral. Maggie is miffed and would like to ditch the whole business of a funeral. But since Marv was viewed as a hero by the whole community, that wouldn't be appropriate. Maggie's girlhood friend, Julie, who is married to Marv's brother, Jeff, visits next. Maggie feels upset and left down that Julie hasn't visited a few days earlier when Maggie needed her. Why did Marv spend so much time away from his home with Jeff at a men's club? Was Marv having an affair? Maggie isn't sure what to think. Quincy Tyler Bernstein as Maggie is on stage for the whole duration of the play. She is truly magnificent. Every word she utters rings absolutely true. Even more impressive is her completely lucid reactions as a sympathetic but troubled listener. The play itself is also a gem in presenting the experience of mourning and as a portrait of a marriage. I was much more impressed with this production than with other more lauded works on Broadway recently. It was both extremely moving and rather surprising. I recommend it highly.
You know this is good if both Mark and I were blown away by this play. The way everyone who came grief calling slipped a piece of information to finally solve what exactly did Marv do to become a hero was so suspenseful. It is like a mystery you are trying to solve. For me, I thought it was about a school shooting, as that is sadly what to expect nowadays. But then again, it could be any number of situations that warrant heroic action to save lives. Michael Chernus made a very amiable narrator, setting up details of the setting and Maggie and Marv and the townsfolk that it immediately brings to mind the stage manager in our town. Like Mark, it is always a delight to see Quincy Tyler Bernstein and Will Dagger, who recently left downtown to go to Broadway to be in Good Night and Good Luck. But this was such a stacked cast of the best actors in New York. Constance Schulman, as a funeral director, always has this flighty but earnest delivery that warms your heart and makes you chuckle. The difficulties of funeral directors these days. Amelia Workman as Maggie's BFF tried to be supportive, but Maggie didn't make it easy. Both Julie and her husband, played by Danny McCarthy, show the awkwardness of trying to express condolences to a conflicted, grieving person. This play is a landfill, trying to express how profound this was, but not wanting to give away too much, as it has the most spectacular build to make us feel just like Maggie. Well, I couldn't let this one go. I couldn't even talk about this play afterwards, as it had me so choked up. I give this such an absolute happy face, and they've extended it to September 12th. But if you want to see Quincy Tyler Bernstein, you have to go August 29th because that's she has to leave then. But absolutely go see this.
I too gave it an absolute happy face. I think it's the play that I raved the most over in quite a while.
Omar Bakri's In the Shadow of Her Father perfectly captures a common relationship archetype: altruistic adult child and manipulative parent, set against a completely singular experience. Eva is a Lebanese woman living out her middle age in rural Ohio, where she is taking care of her mentally and physically ill father, who adopted her during his time in the Vietnam War. Ava's isolated life is upturned by a stranger who pushes her to consider more for herself than the conservative county she grew up in. This show manages to be both extremely relevant yet timeless in examining racism in rural America. Eva finds unfamiliar solace in Nabil through conversations about being othered in a conservative community, unearthing her pain as she speaks about the covert racism of older people and the modern passive racism of the young people. Inji El Gamal, who plays Ava, exhibits the quiet exhaustion of a forced caretaker. Gamal is highly expressive, and when she is joyful, it is etched into every muscle of her face, begging the audience to join in her celebration. Because of this quality, there are moments where her pain and stress are dramatized and read more as a temper tantrum in the face of her father. Not necessarily a bad choice, because while Ava is clearly more emotionally mature than her father, he treats her as a small child. I would like to hear her reach deeper in her register during some of the arguments to hear the weight of her pain. Roger Hendricks Simon, who plays Walter, proves to be an expert in his field. He brings humor that is likable and endearing at the top of the show, power that is terrifying when backing his bigotry, and tenderness to his relationship with Ava that, despite everything, makes his love for her undeniable. Khalid Abul Naga, who plays Nabil, fills the stage with charisma, quick to ease tension with a cheeky superstar smile, banging through comedic beats with ease. He struggles, however, to really sink into quiet beats and lightens moments that deserve more gravity. The show is a little over 2 hours, but really doesn't need more than an hour and 45 minutes to achieve success. The transitions drag to the sound of a lovely original song written by actor Khalid Abul Naga. One transition lasts nearly 2 minutes. The transition consists of technicians running on stage in the dim blue light to add set dressing for the upcoming scene, sometimes neglecting to take props away from the prior scenes, which results in a beautiful set overcrowded with props. Most of these could easily be removed entirely from the scenes, often used simply to keep actors' hands busy. I noticed plenty of opportunities where actors could organically hide and reveal props when necessary. These transitions happened between 8 scenes and unfortunately took me out of the world far longer than I would have liked. Overall, I thoroughly enjoyed the show, and as a world premiere, this script has excellent bones and a great potential to grow. I wish the cast and crew a very successful run. Happy face minus.
Also at 59th Street Theaters with Shadow of Her Father, with Jasmine just gave, is Penguin Reps, Gene and Gilda by Gary Gitter, directed by Joe Brancato, where it's all about, how Gene Wilder met Gilda Radner and their on again, off again relationship. And the actress that plays Gilda was very, she had the curly hair, she had the delivery, she was very good. Her name was Jordan Kai Burnett. And I must say, Jonathan Randall Silver looked more like Danny Kaye than Gene Wilder, but he still could pull it off. And they even had Dick Cavett there to set up the whole premise of the play, as it's an interview with him and Dick Cavett. But Tony's going to tell you more, and I'll talk after.
There's always this interest in celebrity relationships, like Humphrey Bogart and Lauren Bacall, Richard Burton and Elizabeth Taylor, and Richard Burton and Elizabeth Taylor again. So this was different in that these were people, not only were they respected in the industry, but they were beloved. There's nobody has any dirt on Gene Wilder or Gilda Radner. There's really like a lot of love for both of these people, and it's a really touching story. It's so many levels of subtleties too, because these are people that are just like really speaking, and they're not trying to impress each other, because each person came to the relationship with immense respect for their co-star in in their industry. One very much in television, and then the other one very much in film. The performances are just really, really beautiful. I just want to say one absolute highlight of the show, and it's almost worth it to see the show for this one moment, is that she hears a song on the radio and she runs to the radio and she says, "I love this song, let's dance." And it's a very famous song from the 1970s. It's when different forms of music actually made it into the top 40. And it's he was not exactly a one-hit wonder in jazz, but for pop music, Hurricane Smith was very much a one-hit wonder with this song called "Oh Babe, What Would You Say," which has a very nice dancey feel to it. And what happens is the two of them have this beautiful choreography. This is very, very early on in their liking of each other. It's not like a fully fledged relationship at this point when this happens. But you can tell these are two people that just like really are in sync, and they really belong together. And the ironic part is she, in a dream, discovered that she was going to be in a relationship with Gene Wilder. And at that time, she was very married, not happily married, but she was very, very married to one of the musicians on Saturday Night Live's band, who also happened to tour with Hall and Oates. So she was, still going after somebody who was in the industry, but it was just, they got married too fast. They knew each other for like about 5 minutes, apparently, and then they got married, and she was instantly unhappy. And she just was madly in love with Gene Wilder without even knowing him. There was just something about him. He became like a little bit of a challenge to her because he was very, very set in his ways. And that's really what we watch in this show is this actress taking on the role of somebody who is determined to change. It's like that song that Diana Ross and the Supremes did, "I'm going to make you love me, yes I will." That's what she did. That is her MO for the entire first half of the show. And it is really charming to watch. It is absolutely a stellar performance out of this actress. He's wonderful as well. In his just his little mania, he actually has a handkerchief that he uses to keep himself from having fits, just out of that Leo Bloom sequence in The Producers. He's really, really funny, and a totally believable relationship in the show.
And we should mention that the movement consultant is Ryan Kasparek, who I know from doing a lot of stuff with Parallel Exit. He's a really brilliant dancer on his own. So yes, I mean, because you talk so much, I don't have to say anything too much more. But just that I love Gene Wilder. I've always been in love with Gene Wilder, who's also very good on stage. I saw him in Westport. I went to see him in a play in Westport, so I've seen him in theaters too. He started off in theater, but he made his mark in movies, and how he wrote the screenplays for the movies they were in, and it was just such a good working personal relationship, and I just love this. Even though Gene Wilder looked like Danny Kaye, they're both very funny people, so I'm giving this a happy face plus.
I would have to do the same thing. Happy face, major happy face. I saw Josh Sharp's wonderful one-man show, Tada. And actually, that's not fair, because I think his 2,000 slide PowerPoint is every bit a character as he is in the show. He's constantly ticking down like a doomsday clock beside Josh's performance. The screen is very much the second protagonist of what we're watching for 80 minutes. And it is no mere backdrop. It's a manifesto, it's a metronome, and it's a mirror. Its very excess becomes a kind of artistic credo. Sharp doesn't merely mention that there are 2,000 slides, he counts them periodically, like a child on a road trip announcing yet another brown cow. He includes slides that depict the slides that contain screenshots of this very show, plunging us into a self-reflective rabbit hole where theater peers at its own reflection and mutters, "Yes, I see you seeing me." It is hysterically funny. He is a very manic raconteur. We get everything. We get bodily comedy. We have childhood fascinations with magic. Surprisingly delayed coming out narrative. He was very much an adult when he finally came out, and that's only because his mother, dying of cancer, just dragged him out of the closet by, I guess, feet first. And it's all very disarming. It could very much divide the room, but I think it's one of those stories that really, really is very telling and speaks to so many people at so many times during the show. The line between intimacy and exhibitionism is, after all, a very thin one, and Sharp cartwheels along that very thin line. It's a really, really incredible show, because just when you think he's gone off book and he's gotten lost, he's really right there. I mean, it's all part of the pretense of this show. So just knowing where he goes to the slide and then goes to the slide again is part of the show. And that's really uncanny that a person can remember that level of detail.
Yeah, this is a totally scripted show. He even makes a big deal about it being a totally scripted show. It seems like it's like mediocre and dull and just repetitious, but in his capable hands, it's hysterical. I'm laughing my ass off. And then he takes people from the audience and does bits with them. And he's like something you would see on Ed Sullivan or somewhere. He's just that old-fashioned slam dunk comedian that's got a little edge to it, but he's so charming and affable and has such charisma that you just feel like, whoa, this guy is, you just want to go out and have a beer with him. He is so entertaining. So yes, and the whole point of Tada is it's like the gay, like Tada, I'm gay, I'm out of the closet. So every time he says Tada, it's his word for saying gay. He was pointing out, I'm probably the only straight me and my friend were the only straight people in the audience, because this is but you don't have to be gay to enjoy this. You can just be me and enjoy it, and you to enjoy it. So I'm giving this again a major happy face.
Major happy face from me as well.
After a sold-out run at La Mama in June of 2024, the solo show Can I Be Frank by Morgan Basaches has returned to New York this summer for a limited run at Soho Playhouse through September 13th. Director Sam Pinkleton won a 2025 Tony Award for his work on Oh, Mary. Basaches jumps right in as the comedian Frank Maya performing a gay conscious act in 1987 in the East Village. They start by crying out to the recently deceased performer Liberace, "Why didn't you tell the world you were dying of AIDS?" Realizing that some context might be needed, Basaches asks their creative partner Gloria to turn on the house lights while they explain how they discovered the prominent comedian Frank Maya, who died of AIDS in 1995. It was a few years ago when Basaches was in Sag Harbor, Long Island at an artist retreat, which for those who don't know means a place where you meet new people and have sex with them. There, Basaches was visited by those who knew the late famous comedian and realized how much they could stand to learn about all those who came before us, inspired the world, and because they succumbed to AIDS in the years before drug treatments were available, were more or less erased from history. Back to Liberace. Would he go to hell for not coming out to his fans when he was alive? No, but Maya's routine suggests that Liberace would go to hell for charging $50 for a terrible show at Radio City Music Hall that year. Basaches feigns ignorance of the tone of some of Maya's jokes, but returns to them several minutes later with poignant insights. For example, a young boy is coming out to his father, who says, "Son, I'll pay whatever it takes to cure you." The son replies, "Dad, the only cure for being gay is fame." Basaches clarifies that Maya did not intend to make fun of gay performers for chasing fame. On the contrary, he meant that with fame came societal pressure to go back into the closet. And those who have seen the HBO documentary on Pee Wee Herman recently might appreciate the dark truth of this. The piece is very well researched and performed with heartfelt enthusiasm. Basaches shows they are a stellar performer by integrating so much historical information into what truly feels like an 80s night out at the Pyramid Club. They end by singing the last paragraph of the 1987 essay, yes, he's singing an essay, How to Have Promiscuity During an Epidemic by Douglas Crimp. The energy distilled into production is well worth experiencing for yourself. While Basaches captivates the audience for the entire show, it is clear they are striving to recreate Maya's shows just as he reached the cusp of fame. I'd give it a big happy face.
And for me, this was personal, because back in September of 1991, when I was still an actress, I was in a TV show called Where's the Party, which had Mark O'Donnell in it, and Scott Blakemore, and Bill Squire, and Rob Taub, and a bunch of other people. And we had 2 nights to prove that we could go on national television. Our first guest was Joe Franklin, and our second guest was Frank Maya. So I knew him back when he was still, on the cusp. And when he died of AIDS, it was heartbreaking, because it's like, oh my gosh, he was on our show. Unfortunately, Joe Behar got the gig. And this surprised me, because I wanted to talk to Morgan afterwards. He ran out so fast because he thought he gave a terrible show. And I'm like, are you kidding? I'm in the audience. We're laughing our heads off. And it was really interesting to see this as a double feature with Josh Sharp's Tada, which is another solo comedic show directed by Sam Pinkleton. So I had a wonderful Sam Pinkleton evening, and I strongly recommend this, because people should know and remember Frank Maya. And I'm so grateful for Morgan for bringing him back to life, for other people to realize there were these amazing people that we lost too soon because of that AIDS, which took a lot of my friends too. So I'm giving it a major happy face.
I think it's really an important show because, especially now with the current administration or lack thereof administration, there's a lot of bottles of whiteout being flung from the White House to totally cover up, as if it never existed, any historical record of LGBTQ accomplishment. And Frank Maya, in particular, he was the first gay comic to appear on primetime television. And that is something that is completely lost on a lot of people, because especially now, because if you talk to somebody in their 20s, they have no idea who he is. But people of a certain age that should be remembering that don't. In Morgan's show, there's actually a request for a show of hands of how many people actually were familiar with Frank Maya's work, and not one hand went up at my performance. No.
But they had me, and there were 2 other people.
Yeah, so it's sort of criminal. But when you think of the gay comics that are out there now, it's they probably wouldn't have careers if it wasn't for somebody as exciting and as throw the door open as Frank Maya. I give it a huge happy face.
And our next show will be September 6th. And closing August 24th, you have Limefest, the Tank, and some special events. You've got the Love Show presenting Bedtime Stories, a dreamy experience at the Hidden Jewel Box, August 23rd at 8 o'clock. And Greg Dubin's Magic at Precision Clock Shop in Brooklyn is fantastic. I'll talk about that on the next show. And Pericles, a public works concert experience going on from August 29th to September 2nd at the Cathedral of St. John the Divine, is free. I already got my ticket. And closing September 14th is Elizabeth McGovern and Ava, The Secret Conversations at New York City Center Stage 1. And Twelfth Night is back at the Delacorte. And going on at here, you've got Tariq's Interlude, August 24th, Pretty Delusional, August 27th to 31st, and Gut Act 2 Memoirs going from August 28th to 30th. And have a wonderful rest of the summer.